Before refrigeration was common, and long before anyone expected a grocery store to be open year-round, winter food storage was a matter of engineering, not convenience. During World War II, civilians across Europe, Britain and rural North America relied on a specific storage design that quietly solved a brutal problem. How to keep vegetables alive, not frozen or rotting, for 6 to 8 months with no power, no fuel and no mechanical parts. This was not folk wisdom or guesswork. It was a proven system refined under rationing, bomb damage, labour shortages and fuel scarcity. What makes this design remarkable is not that it worked then, but that it still works now, almost unchanged, and yet is rarely taught or built today. If you stay with this video, you will understand exactly how this design worked, why it was so reliable, and how the same principles can be applied today with basic materials and careful placement. The wartime storage problem forced engineers and farmers to think differently. By the early 1940s, electricity was unreliable in many regions, refrigeration was limited to urban households, and fuel was rationed. Vegetables had to last through winter because replacement food simply did not exist. Fresh produce was seasonal, transport was restricted, and imports were often cut off entirely. The solution that emerged was not technological in the modern sense. It was architectural and environmental. The goal was to maintain 3 conditions at all times: a temperature just above freezing high, but controlled humidity and constant slow air exchange. If those 3 conditions were met, root vegetables, cabbages, apples, and even squash could remain edible for months without shriveling or mouldy. The design that achieved this most reliably was the earth-sheltered root cellar with passive ventilation. The earth-sheltered root cellar worked because, well, the ground never lies. The key insight behind this World War II design was understanding thermal mass. At a depth of roughly 6 to 8 feet, the ground maintains a nearly constant temperature all year round, usually somewhere between 38 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the region. By embedding storage space into that stable zone, temperature swings were eliminated almost entirely. Wartime root cellars were often dug into hillsides or buried under yards, barns, or even garden sheds. Thick earth walls absorbed heat during the warmer days and released it slowly during the colder nights. This prevented freezing, honestly, without requiring any heat source at all. The cellar floor was usually left as packed earth or gravel, which helped regulate humidity naturally. To apply this today, even a small backyard can support a scaled-down version. A concrete culvert buried horizontally into a slope, or a reinforced wooden chamber surrounded by soil, can recreate the same thermal stability if placed below the frost line. The ventilation system quietly prevented rot without drying food out. Temperature alone was not enough, you see. Stored vegetables respire slowly, releasing moisture and gases. Without ventilation, rot and mould would spread quickly. World War II designs solved this with passive airflow using vertical intake and exhaust pipes. A lower intake pipe brought cold air in near floor level, while a higher exhaust pipe allowed warmer, moisture-laden air to escape. Because warm air naturally rises, this created continuous airflow without fans or electricity. Dampers made from simple wooden sliders allowed airflow to be reduced – during extreme cold. In practical terms today, this can be achieved with two 4-inch pipes, one terminating near the floor and one near the ceiling. Even modern PVC works if protected from sunlight. The principle has not changed. One often overlooked detail of World War II storage design was separation. Different vegetables emit different gases. Apples, for example, release ethylene, which accelerates spoilage in potatoes and carrots. Wartime cellars accounted for this by creating zones. So, potatoes were stored in wooden bins with slatted sides, just to allow for proper airflow. Carrots and beets, well, those were often packed in damp sand or sawdust to prevent them from drying out. Cabbages, on the other hand, were hung upside down from the rafters, which kept them dry, but still let the air circulate. And apples, those were kept in crates, always away from the root crops. A modern application, honestly, doesn't require much complexity. Just some simple shelving, breathable containers, and really just being aware of which crops should be separated, well, that achieves the same effect. This design, it survived bombings, power cuts, and even neglect. One reason this system endured during the Second World War was, quite simply, its resilience. Even if a home was damaged, the cellar often survived. If fuel ran out, nothing changed. If power failed, nothing stopped working. Maintenance was really minimal. As long as the ventilation stayed clear and water was kept away from the structure, the cellar just kept on working, year after year. So this is why, many wartime cellars continued to be used well into the 1960s and 70s, long after refrigerators had become common in most households. They were just reliable in ways that, honestly, modern systems sometimes are not. Modern homes, well, they abandoned this design mainly for convenience, not because it wasn't effective. After the war, housing priorities shifted quite a bit. Basements turned into utility spaces rather than being used for food storage. Refrigeration, it became cheap and widespread, and the whole food system moved toward constant resupply instead of seasonal planning. The result, really, was the quiet disappearance of a design that had already proven itself under the harshest conditions imaginable. Yet today, with rising energy costs, fragile supply chains, and, a renewed interest in self-reliance, this World War II design remains one of the most effective food preservation methods ever developed. Why does this knowledge still matter now? Well, this isn't just nostalgia. It's what I'd call applied history. The same principles that kept families fed during wartime scarcity can actually reduce waste, lower energy use, and restore a level of independence that, frankly, many people no longer realize is possible. If this sort of forgotten wartime knowledge matters to you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who remembers living seasonally, and help keep these lessons alive. After all, history only stays forgotten if no one uses it.